All right. Hey, how's it going? I'm Laura. I teach 11th and 12th grade English, and I write about my experiences teaching on my Tumblr. But I also love young adult literature. I always have. I've always been really passionate about it. And so I decided that this summer, while I have a little bit of time, I would work my way through the list of Prince Award winners. So if you haven't heard of the Prince Award before, it's an award that's given to young adult writers. So I figured it'd be a really cool way to discover some new authors that I haven't read before, and most importantly, just to stay on top of what's cool and what's trending in the young adult genre so that I'm able to make really good book recommendations to my kiddos, which I think is really important. So I thought it would also be cool after reading each book, ideally one book per week, two books if I have more time. After reading each book, I would record a quick review video. So I thought what would be most useful would be to do a super quick plot summary, nothing too detailed because I don't want to give anything away, but enough so that you know kind of the subject matter of the book. A list of things that I think it would be cool to use the book to teach, so stylistic elements, structural techniques, even just thematic questions that are brought up by the book that I think would be useful to use in the classroom. And then finally, I thought it would be cool just to say what kinds of students I think this book would appeal to, so that again, you're able to make those good book recommendations to your kids. So I started off with my first book, which is Jellicoe Road by Melina Marchetta. And I had never read anything of hers before. She's an Australian writer, but I was really glad I started with it because I loved it. I finished it last night, and it was one of those books that I immediately wanted to reread, and I don't have that feeling very often, but it's partially because it was a mystery, so it's one of those books where you piece all the clues together and you immediately want to just thumb back through and kind of reread everything now that you have everything figured out. But beyond that, it was just so beautifully written. I loved her writing style, and I immediately wanted to go back to the beginning and read it again. So I can't recommend it enough. In terms of quick plot summary, I don't know if that's super possible with a book like this. The plot is really intricately woven, and also I just really want to be cautious about not giving anything away because it is kind of a mystery. But the best I can boil it down is there are three main storylines. So storyline number one is about the protagonist, Taylor Markham. She is 17 years old, and she attends a boarding school outside of Sydney, Australia called the Jellicoe School. So she is like many 17-year-old protagonists. She's trying to figure out who she is, and she's struggling with kind of those big life questions. She does have some stuff in her past that makes these questions a little bit more difficult to answer for her. Specifically, the reason that she attends the Jellicoe School, which in many ways is a school for students who don't have anywhere else to go, is because she was abandoned by her mother when she was 11. So she has kind of a rough past that she's trying to piece together and figure out. When she's 14, after a couple of years at the school, she actually runs away and tries to run back to her mother. And on this journey, she meets Jonah Griggs, who is your classic dark, brooding, handsome, male young adult literature character. So he's going to become important later, Jonah Griggs. So that's where she meets him. So that's kind of the main storyline, is Taylor going to the school, trying to figure out who she is and kind of her life at this boarding school. Storyline number two is not going to make any sense, but I would promise that within the context of the story, it fits in seamlessly. Storyline number two is about the territory wars. So every year at the school, between like September to November, there are these territory wars between the students, the townies who live in the town near the Jellicoe School, and these cadets. These are boys from a military school in the city that come and stay and camp out in the woods near the Jellicoe School for a few months every year as part of like a leadership wilderness training kind of program. So every year during those months, these three groups of people are engaging in this war over land. So there are really formal rules, and there are hostages and invasions and safe territories and all these negotiations between the leaders of each group. And Taylor happens to be the leader of the students, and Jonah Griggs happens to be the leader of the cadets. Oh, there he is again. So that's kind of the backdrop for what's going on, and that provides a lot of adventure and excitement and kind of drama, is these territory wars. Storyline number three at first seems completely disconnected from the rest of the book. And in fact, it's told in italics, kind of interspersed within the rest of the story. This is a story about 5 teenagers who become linked together through tragedy 20 years before. So these are, a couple of them are students at the Jellicoe school. I want to be really cautious as I go over this storyline. But they become joined together through a tragic car accident that happened on the Jellicoe Road outside the school just over 20 years before. So while this seems at first like a completely disconnected storyline, it actually turns out to be very closely linked to Taylor's storyline. That's all I'm saying, I promise. All right, so that's the plot summary. Hopefully that kind of hooks your interest already. In terms of things that you could use this book to teach, there's so many things. I think the first main thing is showing students how to juggle multiple storylines. I think that's something that can be really difficult for them. That ability to balance and to look for motifs and to look for how things are connected and to work through clues, I think that's a really important skill. I think it also kind of implicitly teaches about dialect, which is really cool as well. You know, it is written by an Australian writer, and it's not difficult to read, but there are definitely dialect differences, and I think that can open up a lot of cool discussion. And you just kind of pick it up implicitly. I didn't know that pashing meant making out, and I thought that was a fun realization. So there's just little words and little dialect differences that I think are cool to pick up on. In terms of what kind of students this book would appeal to, I would say primarily girls. Now, I don't mean to generalize, but I do think it would appeal primarily to girls, and that's not just because it's a female protagonist. I think there are elements that, and again, not to generalize, but I think there are elements that would appeal to male readers, particularly the sections about the territory wars, but I do think it would appeal primarily to female readers. I imagine this being something that would be really appealing to more advanced readers. I can imagine some of my more advanced readers really getting into it. I think it takes, most importantly, a patient reader. So a student that is very, very attentive, pays a lot of attention to details, doesn't mind kind of wading through textual difficulty when they know there's going to be a good payoff. I will say that for me, I struggled in the beginning of the book. At first, it's not apparent at all how these storylines fit together, and I could imagine a less patient reader or a more reluctant reader just throwing the book aside and saying, I can't wait this out, I can't piece all these clues together. But a really patient reader, I think, would really revel in that and like how everything kind of weaves together as the book goes on. So I love this book. I can't recommend it enough. Definitely 5 out of 5 stars. I think that a lot of students would really, really enjoy it. So I really encourage you to read it and to recommend it to your kids. All right, so that's my first review. Next up is going to be Where Things Come Back by John Corey Whaley. I've read a lot of great things about this one, so I'm going to be doing a review of that next week, and I'm really excited about it. So hopefully you enjoyed my first review, and let me know if there's any particular books that you would like me to review. Again, I'm going to stick with the Prince list, but I'm just really excited to open up you guys and my students to a whole new world of cool young adult literature. So thanks. Have a good day.